grind, and they're very, very physical. When I saw Spider-Man, the first one, where they animated him, I was very, very jealous. I was like, man, he didn't even have to do all that. But all the flying and things like that, I mean, it's a very physical thing to fly and make it look like you're comfortable, because you just picked at the hips with one, little pick and a wire, a cable, and you're hanging there. You really hang like this. That doesn't look good. Superman hangs head down, feet down. So you have to stretch out, balance, and things. And
how many hours of hang time is there compared to how much you see on TV, on the screen?
It's ridiculous. We used to do it for every episode we shot, which was 8 days of shooting. I would then do, as we were in between shots and things, I would just do like almost an entire day of green screen, just flying, hanging there. And because it's a super suit, the harness had to be so tight that it basically cut off your blood to 2 quadrants of your body, above the waist and below the waist, and that was it. And then you'd get the worst headaches. Couldn't have been good for me. Couldn't have been. But we would do it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Somebody did a cartoon once where it had me hanging. Well, it had Superman hanging, and it said Lois&Clark, and that's exactly how I felt. And they were broken for lunch, and he's kind of going, guys, because when you have you up there, they don't think about what it's like and how physically uncomfortable it is. Right. And I would make that exact sound right there. And I know how it is, buddy. Yeah, I get it. So it was that's to answer the question. I did a lot of my own stunts, but for the big ones, it was the big boys.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Play against the Pats?
No, sir. I got injured before the first preseason game, which was Houston. I never even got to play in a game. It was the most frustrating thing in the world. And I really thought that had I gotten into it, had I been in a game, that something was going to happen, ball bounced the wrong way, I get out of position. But there are certain guys who find the ball. And, the Patriots defense, the Pats do it. They'll find those players who have a nose for the ball, whether it's Mike Vrabel or guys like that, that might not be the fastest guy in the field, but he's always in the right spot. Guys like that, there's a football sense that you can't measure in combines and things, and Belichick is a way of finding those guys, and I like to think of myself as one of those kind of players. So I wish I had the opportunity. I would love to play against the Pats. I would love to have picked off anybody who's exactly. Well, you guys were kind of doormats at that point. Boy, has that changed. Holy smokes.
Well, on the upside of not playing professional football, you're probably not going to be dealing with the concussive situation later in life.
Yeah, I definitely won't be dealing with that. I've already been checked and things like that. Honest to goodness, and I'm not being a naysayer, I just don't know. I don't know anybody personally who's really had a problem with CTE. I think it's interesting. I don't know that the science is settled on that. I don't know. And I had a lot. I was unconscious once from a shot in college, and I saw stars 3 times a week. So hard to say what happens. But those linemen who were pounding, kind of the Mike Websters and those guys were pounding every play, that sort of repeated thing. Right. I didn't have to do that. I get the high impact shots and here and there. Obviously, you're a football player, you sign up for it. That being said, my 16-year-old doesn't play, and I'm not unhappy that he doesn't have to have that danger. So I just don't know how that's going to turn out, and I don't think that I've had too much brain damage, but you never know. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses. And they're doing a lot of good things to stop that from happening. I think the targeting call in college football is a joke, and that needs to go. Fine, a 15-yard penalty, fine, but you don't boot the kid out. There's a lot of bang-bang plays that happen right now, and your head, it just happens. So they need to amend that a little bit. But they're working the right way to try to find the answer to that. And I like not hitting the defensive receivers and stuff like that, because back in the day, ball thrown over someone's head, we would just clean them out. But I've been on both sides of that, and it's not fun.
Go to the audience here. Superman over here.
DDA.
You have so before everything, I'm very happy to be here with you and with Dean Cain, okay? Because we're coming from Canada, we are French, actually, so we are here like fanboys, and thank you for the in some way. Because I'm more from the south of France, but
that I hear.
I'm here.
This I can hear.
Yeah, and watching Lois&Clark, I had a question for all these years. In Superman Chris Reeve, it is obviously very easy to make the difference between the two characters. Okay, one is But in Lois&Clark, the very interesting fact is that you never forget that's him at any moment, okay? Even if we cannot see him in suit on screen, but what is the reflection, what is the process you've had to inspire the people, the public, that he's always here, even if he's not, even if he's Clark Kent? Because it's really interesting. Superman is here every time, actually, but it's more Clark Kent on the screen. So how did you manage to do that?
That's an interesting perspective. First of all, did he look like, he looks like the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, doesn't he? I mean, he's got the face, he's got the curl, he's got the whole deal. For us, that was the whole part of Lois and Clark, is that Clark was the main character. Clark was the guy, and Superman was the character that he became so he could help and do things, and it was sort of his disguise so that he could live a regular life outside of being a superhero all the time. And that was the main crux of the show, was that he is Superman and can do those things. He could have done it without the suit. He didn't need the suit in order to fly or do those things, obviously. Excuse me. And so that was just kind of the way it was on paper. That's what they wanted from the get-go. They wanted that character there. So for me, I sort of, if I had to model my Clark Kent character, it was on the paper. They did a good job creating him, but he was much more like the way that George Reeves played Clark Kent. And then Superman was very much the way that Christopher Reeve played Superman. And that was, I kind of just measured those two things. And whenever I have to be sort of Superman in public, I didn't like Superman sitting around and doing things. I always thought Superman was like the character of action. I always wanted him to just be Superman, do his thing, and get out of there. I didn't want him giving speeches, having scenes when he was Superman. I wanted Clark to have those scenes, and I wanted Superman to come in, do the action, and get out. Part of it was I might have felt silly sitting around in the suit, but you're doing it all day and doing a good job. And I noticed Melissa, she does that, a lot of stuff in her super suit, in that suit. So it's a different incarnation in that sense. And I really just wanted Superman to be sort of the man of action. Occasionally show up for something and get out, and that was it. And so that's that. That's kind of the deal. They did it on paper, and the character was written that way, and I thought that was the right way to play it. And but I give all that credit to Deborah Joy Levine, who created the character. They called it Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, because it was much more about that relationship between Lois and Clark. And it wasn't the angsty thing that they have now going on, where he's an alien and doesn't fit in and dark. It was a very light, nice to see you again, Finn. It was a very light version where it's, Clark wasn't angsty. He fit in to some degree, and had that great upbringing and a strong family and such. But it was on the page. They did a good job on the page.
I was going to ask you then about the current Superman incarnation and the whole dark side and the way that's evolved, I suppose. Does it bother you at all that it's taken that turn? You have a certain investment in the character. You don't own it, obviously, but what do you think about the way that's turned?
What do you mean I don't own it?
I believe Marvel.
No, that would be DC. So.
DC.
Unless you know something.
That's right.
Unless you know something I don't know. Listen. I think that I think Zack Snyder's a great filmmaker. I think they did a great job with the film. It's well made. I don't like the incarnation personally. It's not my favorite. I like Superman to be a character of light and hope and positivity, and it's an awfully dark, angsty portrayal. Superman seems angry.
He does.
And I didn't know Superman to be an angry character. And I joked about if it was really Superman versus Batman, it would be a short, Superman, Batman. Boom. End of story. I thought that was kind of how it should go. I was like, how is it taking them years to do that? Boom, finished.
2 hours and 20 minutes.
Could have shot that thing in a freaking afternoon. Boom, it's over. So I'm not a fan of that world that they have, that dark, dark world. It's good for Batman to live in that, but I just don't know that that's Superman's world. For me, personally, I watched the film. I was in a very, very comfortable theater. I might have dozed off a little bit because it was so comfortable at the theater. I saw it with my son and Sean Stockman from Boys to Men. We saw it. He was in there with me. I was like, what the heck? And I was just kind of watching it a couple times, and I was like, I woke up and I was like, I literally didn't miss anything. I didn't miss it. They went into a lot of the backstory and things, which is fine, but you know the story and you know the things and the way it went. I don't know. It was okay. They're, like I said, good filmmakers, but not my cup of tea, 100%. I'd rather watch Supergirl.
We got to wrap up pretty soon. Let's take a couple more from the crowd. Anything over this side?
Young lady here.
Hold on.
Oh, my mom. I love when a question starts with that. My mom wanted to.
My mom wanted to know how you get your hair like that.
Like this? Thank you very much. By the way, if anybody ever watched Lady Dynamite, that's who she's dressed as. She's dressed as Maria Bamford from Lady Dynamite, which I did that show on Netflix for about 8 episodes, which is a very funny show. What I do is I take a shower, then I stick my finger in the light socket. Pretty much good to go. That's it. No, I just kind of comb it in the morning and there it goes. It's a little poofy. If I want to poof up, I throw a little blow dryer on it, you know. Shame on you. I got those Japanese jeans. It's not going gray on me yet, so I'm okay with that. Lucky so far, but we'll see what happens.
Over there? Back there? Back.
Hey Dean, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
I always thought it was perfect that your initials are DC too. So.
It worked out well. The DC company. They don't give me any ownership though.
And that kind of leads into what I got. Actually, a two-part question is: what was DC's involvement in scripts? You know, was there a compliance guy on there? And did they ever talk with you about how to act off the camera to maintain the dignity of the character?
Great questions, both of
Good
them.
one.
Number one, yes. To answer the first question, DC, there wasn't a compliance person there, but they were always around. So I don't know what the specific arrangement was, but they were there. We were sort of doing the marriage of Superman. The death of Superman was kind of just happened. So there was a lot of things going on. So they were very involved. I remember seeing Jeanette Kahn, who was then the head of DC Comics, around all the time, and she's a bigger, larger-than-life character, so you don't miss her when she's around. And I remember DC people being around quite often. So I know we were working with them hand in hand and trying to make sure things were done. So we were both very happy. So that happened a lot. And I remember it being a nice, comfortable synergy. It was a positive thing. It wasn't as though like they were watching everything we did and we weren't doing a good job. We were working together and it was nice. As far as how to act off the camera, never a word. Never told me a thing to say or do, which is interesting, and I appreciate that. Maybe they just sort of assumed, you know, I don't think there was ever I don't do a whole lot of crazy stuff, you know. You work so many hours. We would literally work, I would be gone 18 hours a day. They kind of don't leave your room. It's like what I do with my teenager now, get him so involved that he can't do anything wrong. Keep him busy, and I think that's part of what happened. But they never discussed with us specifically, hey, listen, don't do this, don't do that. You know, maybe my producers might have had we might have had some off-the-cuff conversations about it, but I put most of that onto my own parents. I had a very strong parental upbringing. I'm adopted. My father adopted me when I was 4, but it's my biological mother. But my dad came in and kept me on the straight and narrow. He's a farm boy from South Dakota, and I promise you, if I stepped out of line, he'd have put me right back in line. It would be a carrot or the stick, more often the stick than the carrot. And it worked out well for me. And so I would say that, you know, my behavior off camera was much more of a product of having my father keep me straight. And, you know, being a football player, you tend to do that stuff, even though sometimes they get a bad rap. The truth is, the truth is, you know, you're part of a team and you're representing a team, or whether you're representing Princeton University or whether you're representing, you know, Superman. It's something that was sort of just built in, but they never ever told me anything I had to say or do. And I think that's important, and so not to get too political, but sometimes today you'll see some things where they've even had me do it. I did a show called Hit the Floor on VH1, and there were some things they were trying to get us to do, some PSAs, pushing a political agenda, and I chose not to participate in that because I didn't agree with that particular political agenda, which I won't talk about. It was keeping goldfish out of the hands of children, and clearly Finn doesn't agree with that. But you know, that does happen. I've seen that happen. It happened this last election cycle, and I think that's the wrong way to go. If somebody wants to participate, go ahead, and you can voice your opinion, sure. But they were very good about letting us be our own person. I thought that was great. But that's a very good question. Thank you for that.
Let's do one more and wrap it. In the back, way back. Yeah, one of you guys. I can't even see.
Hi, thank you for being here today. Do you ever find that as an actor, that your role as Superman ever eclipsed some of the more serious pieces that you've done?
That's a good question. That's a typecasting question. You know, the funny thing about that is, it could, I suppose, but I remember when I was auditioning for Out of Time. Carl Franklin was the director, and obviously Denzel Washington had just won Best Actor, and Carl Franklin didn't know me. He wasn't sitting at home watching Superman. He was a grown man at the time, and but he knew that I played professional football. He wanted a man that would stand up there and be able to stand opposite Denzel, and you'd think that it could go either way between those two guys, and he didn't care. He's like, this guy played in the NFL. Denzel's not going to anticipate, he's not going to intimidate him on screen or off. It's going to be two men standing there, and Denzel being a big football fan, it was a cool thing. So Carl came in, I came in, and Carl didn't care. He didn't care I played Superman. He had never seen it, didn't care at all, just looked at me and said, could this guy do this role? And, I don't think about it as a character. I mean, here's the thing. All of us do it. We all stereotype any actor. And if you see somebody, if you just saw Ryan Reynolds play Deadpool, you go, that's what he does. That's his only thing. And it's really easy to get typecast. And they tend to typecast you as the last thing you play. So if I played a big heavy in some other thing, that'd be known as the guy who played the heavy in this or this. So it can get in the way, and I'd be a fool if I said people didn't associate my name with Superman. I totally understand that. If I see, Jennifer Aniston's had quite a career outside of playing Rachel, but how many people look at her and don't ever say, oh, it's Rachel from Friends? It happens, and that's part of the deal. The thing about now is, because there's so much product, so many shows, so many different shows, whether it's on Amazon or Hulu or Netflix, that you can play so many different characters. I think it's great. And I think it's a fleeting thing. I remember when the only thing I'd ever done was Lois&Clark. The only thing I'd ever played was Superman. And then I started doing Ripley's Believe It or Not. And it was a very short period of time after that, between those projects. And I remember I was coming into Atlanta, and there was a kid. And I was getting my baggage from baggage claim, and he's like, oh my God, you're the guy. And I expected Superman. He's like, from Ripley's Believe It or Not. And I was like, wow. That just happened. And I just became that guy. Now it's going to be like, you're Supergirl's dad. And then pretty soon it's going to be like, you're Supergirl's grandfather. But that's okay. And for me, it doesn't bother me. It's perception and who's out there. And if somebody can buy you a different role, great. I mean, listen, I've had people go, hey, it's Scott Peterson, because I played that guy too. I don't necessarily like that one. I like the character, I played the role. I mean, I like playing the role, I like the film, but I don't want to be known as him, So it's always out there, but it's not something that I harp on, and hopefully audience members will buy you something else. And I've done 100 and something movies since, so I never think about it in those terms. But it's fun every once in a while, have fun with it. And one of those silly comedies, or do something where you kind of, a little ode to it, a little comedy to it, that's okay.
We are about out of time here. We're running a little 5 minutes late.
Oh my gosh.
But I think we're good.
We're late.
Dean, thank you for joining us here today. Good to have you.
Yeah, for sitting and listening to me. Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you out there then. All right.
Cheers, guys. Good to meet you. Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you. My pleasure. Nice to meet you. Oh! California girl, Boston. Oh, my. I hope your arm, sir. Yeah, I know.
Dean, pleasure to meet you.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.